Hello? Can you hear me now? You should be able to hear me now. What the hell? Not cool, man. I don't know why that got selected to a different thing. Thank you for letting me know, or else I would have totally messed that up. What's up, all man? What's up, Nan P? What's up, SDC? By the way, hello. Thank you for letting me know that I was muted for some reason. So, like I was saying, I appreciate all of your guys' support and everything, especially with the shorts. The shorts channel is doing very well. I think the editor, my shorts editor, Tycho, the guy helping me out with those, is very happy with how those have been performing on their own channel. So that's great. For the shorts, I think for me, for the shorts, it's not necessarily about like growing my subscriber base like on my main channel. It's more about just like putting me and other people in front of as many eyes as possible so that if they do stumble upon my name in a Discord or my name on YouTube, they'll subscribe then to the main channel. But it's not necessarily like a direct draw at this point. We just want to build that channel as much as possible. So if you're on YouTube Shorts and you can if you're on YouTube Shorts and you see a short, definitely hit that like button on it. That'd really help us out a lot. Did Tycho say how much you are paying him? No, I haven't really asked on whether or not that should be public, but I'll just say that it feels very reasonable. And it's not anything insane, but it's kind of like a hopefully more can go to him as the channel continues to grow sort of thing. So, but yeah, I don't want to be I like to be transparent about all this stuff, but since another person's involved, I'm not sure that they want that information out there for everybody. So if he does see this and he says that it's okay, I can let you guys know on the next one, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that just in case he would like that information to be private. But yeah, I mean, I feel like it's reasonable. We're shooting for 3 shorts a week, I think, was the original goal. And we're definitely hitting that. A lot of my content is actually really decent for shorts. So like the top flips videos, like each one of those makes a pretty decent short. The trivia challenge or live streams, each kind of question makes for a pretty decent short. So I'm kind of I put out content that's pretty conducive to shorts, so which I think really helps him, helps me. It's really nice to kind of repackage those things and get them in front of more people. So, but yeah, I hope you guys are doing well. All man, nice to see you. Nampi, nice to see you. Tonight, I do have. Oh shoot! Tonight, I do have a. You're gonna have to go into the description, maybe. Let me see. Tonight, I have a topic because I was listening to. Man, who was I listening to? I was listening to. I think it might have been Beerski's live with Gengar's Den. Maybe I'm trying to remember who said this, but I thought it was an interesting concept. Should Arceus, or should there be some sort of apocalyptic event that happens to the Pokemon universe that culls the Pokedex? So removes or quote unquote retires a large portion of the Pokedex. And at first I was like, yeah, I mean that sounds drastic. It probably would piss some people off, but at the same time, I think to some extent it makes a lot of sense. What the frick? Okay, you guys will just have to go into the description to. Why did this do this? Hold on. God damn it. But yeah, after thinking about it for the last day or so, I feel like it's actually a good idea. Maybe it doesn't need to happen immediately, but I do feel like at some point, if the number of Pokemon continues to grow. And we've obviously seen, I think, that the vast majority of Pokemon are not necessarily Pokemon that people care about, like Pokemon that people want to collect or want to play the game with or want to, engage with in any way. That I almost feel like it forces Pokemon Company to think about that they have these Pokemon that are in play that they need to do something with, or feel pressure around, including everyone where we can include them, right? So it's like instead of Bruxish, we probably could have gotten a way cooler, better Pokemon as an illustration rare in this upcoming set. Instead of I just think that there's obviously ways to figure out like what are the 500-600 most popular Pokemon from all the generations. What are the ones that people consistently go back to as ones that they enjoy and want to collect, or make people really hype about the cards, or whether they're included in the video games. You could get that information and you could utilize it to kind of cull the Pokédex, cut off, 400 or 500 Pokemon that people just don't think about, and kind of move forward from there, and kind of do that every, so often. Um, and you can always bring Pokemon out of retirement. You can, if you feel like there's a use for them, but to actually get rid of um, parts of the Pokédex formally, so that people aren't just like, oh, I really want, X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, sorry, Timmy. Uh X, Y, and Z is retired. So you're not going to see a card of them unless they bring them out of retirement. Then there's like they're setting an expectation of like, okay, in the cards coming up or in the games coming up, you're going to see these 500 Pokemon. Not we're not going to try and bring all 1,000 to um the cards or to the games or to the different places. I think that's an interesting idea personally. Um, I think Sword and Shield video game is the first game to not have the entire Pokédex. Well, I think that is kind of an issue as well, right? Because Sword and Shield, no, well, I think that there were games prior to that. I mean, I think Black and White was maybe the first one where they really tried to do like a quote unquote soft reset of the series, where they were like, yeah, you're only going to be able to play with Black and White Pokemon until the end game. And then in the end game, you can unlock like more Pokemon from the different generations. But for the most part, in this like main part of the game, you can only play with Black and White Pokemon. And I think that was met with like a combination of, like some people liked it, some people didn't. It really depended on how much you kind of connected yourself to the Black and White Pokemon. So they tried to kind of do it then, but then I felt like when Sword and Shield came out and they got rid of the concept of the national dex, or that was a huge thing when Sword and Shield came out. Everyone hated the fact that not all the Pokemon were going to be in the game, or not, at least not all of the like more popular Pokemon that people wanted to play, like with the new graphics, with the new in the new game against new trainers, have them out running around in the world. And that was a huge talking point during Sword and Shield of why people hated it. Um, or not hated it, but why people were uh, critical of it before the game came out, was the fact that, and to be honest, it felt at that point, because they weren't really updating anything. The games have been kind of stagnant over the few years. It's like you have so much money, you have enough time that you could put in the resources, you could put most of the Pokemon in, you could give them better graphics, you could give them new animations, you could do something with these games other than just kind of regurgitate the same shit that you do every other year. um but they kind of don't. They have tried, I guess, in terms of like the game structures, but in terms of graphics and stuff, they haven't updated since. I mean, when you have games that have been in the 3D realm for as long as they have, and yet your best looking games are probably still in the 2D graphics, that's pretty rough. Like we got to put some effort into how these games look. But this isn't about the games. This is on whether or not some of or 50%, say 50% of the Pokédex could be culled, and whether or not we would be better for it. Um, and this isn't necessarily a Gen 1er conversation. This is a conversation about um I think that having this many Pokemon, having over 1,000 Pokemon, just stretches and makes it so that these sets we're seeing right now are just they're lame. They're lame. So many Pokemon in this new set. Like I posted a thing, and I know it got memed on or whatever because there's a lot of just Pokemon modern shills in these different discords. Um, but I posted in the hot takes channel. It's like, let's play Spot the Dragon with our new dragon Pokemon set. And you look at the set and it's like, you got a mushroom, you got a weather ball, you got Bruxish, you got Cetitan, you got Clobopus or whatever the hell that thing is, you got Skarmory, you got Braviary, you got the Apple guys that apparently have 5 evolutions for some reason now. Like, this isn't a dragon set. You just look at it. If you were to ask someone what is the theme of this set, not a single person is going to say dragon. Not a single person, because there aren't even any Pokemon in here that look like a dragon. None of them. Charizard is more a dragon than any of the Pokemon that are in this set right here. Like, there just isn't. It's disappointing. It's super disappointing. So to me, it's like, but Pokemon Company, I'm sure, has the pressure when they create new sets, when they create new games, in figuring out which of the 1,000 plus Pokemon are they going to include in these sets, in these video games, in these things. And if you have 1,000, you got an insane amount to try and choose from to try and make people happy. But if you take 50% of those and you say these Pokemon are retired, they're never coming back, and you set that expectation, then I feel like more people would just be like, okay, well, you know, Clobopus or whatever is retired, so I'm not going to worry about that coming back into the next Pokemon set. Instead, when we hear it's a dragon set, we can think, oh man, okay, so which dragon Pokemon aren't retired? And dude, this set's going to be super cool because you'll have like a better overall expectation of what's happening instead of whatever the hell this set is, because it's not, I mean, it's not a dragon set. It just isn't. Um, so yeah, I think you could get rid of a lot of Pokemon. You could retire them, and just move on. Move on. So that's my thoughts. That's my thoughts on that. It's really just a waifu set. I mean, how many sets though of this generation? You could say that every set this generation, apart from 151 and 151 and Shiny Treasure EX, I guess you could say that every other set's been a waifu set. Like every other set, the biggest hit, apart from Greninja, um, like the biggest secret rare hits have all been trainers, apart from like Magikarp and Greninja. Like, trainers are always toward the top of like the most. I mean, and they're trainers that, like, I don't know. I think type balancing in the TCG could be an issue if you limit Pokemon too much. I mean, not if you're smart about who you retire. I mean, there's tons of Pokemon from all the different types. Like, you retire a certain percentage from every type. You still have every type around. I don't think that would be that big of an issue. We need waifus to pump again, so I'm thankful for the Alicia. We just need we need, I don't know. I think every trainer card should have a Pokemon on it. I think that's something that they should do in the future. I think every trainer card should have a Pokemon on it because to me it just doesn't make sense. Like this is a Pokemon game. And yeah, these trainers are in the anime and stuff like that, but the whole thing about being a Pokemon trainer is that you're training Pokemon. So to me it just doesn't make sense like I like that the Licia or whatever secret rare has the Altaria on it. I think that's really cool. I really like the trainer gallery cards because those had the trainer and the Pokemon. Like I kind of feel like that should be a prerequisite for trainer cards that all trainer cards should have a trainer's Pokemon on it too, because that just seems like a no-brainer. I don't know why we ever have cards that just have trainers and no Pokemon in the artwork. Um, Retiring Pokemon sounds unnecessary to me. Why? I'm curious. I'm curious why you think that. We're all thinking way more than they are. Yeah, but that's the goal of tonight is to think and to have interesting discussions about what Pokemon could do going forward that could be better than what they're doing right now. Um, I thought recently for Yu-Gi-Oh, since they have a power creep problem, that they should do a full restart on mechanics. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to think about, what you're doing. You're 25 years into your 27 years, 28 years into your game being a thing. And I'm sure they have a lot of data on like what people like less, what people like more, and they could utilize that data to make things better, make things more interesting. Um, I think they soft retire Pokemon. Retiring Pokemon officially would be too much. Just don't make cards of the unpopular one so often. Soft retire is fine. But that's what I'm talking about is you set an expectation, which I think is important for fans. Because if you set an expectation that says these Pokemon, these Pokemon going forward are, quote unquote retired, then the expectation is there that the fan isn't going to be like, oh boy, the seventh Gengar card. Where is my, Ice Q illustration rare? When if Ice Q's on the retired list, because you can look and say, oh, that's why Ice Q's not showing up. He's retired, and then nobody talks about it because it's like there's a retired list of Pokemon. If your favorite Pokemon ends up on the retired list, that sucks. But at least you know that okay, going forward in the TCG, Ice Q's not going to get an illustration rare, or Ice Q's not going to get a special illustration rare, and that's just how it is. There isn't like this uh, questioning of like why isn't it showing up? What could what should be there instead? Why should my favorite Pokemon be on there instead? Blah blah blah. Um, Why would Pokemon want to limit themselves? Retiring Pokemon would make people expect more of the Pokemon that aren't retired. Why would they limit themselves? Because, well, they limit themselves with their sets. They limit themselves in their video games. Like we just talked earlier, most of the video games you can't catch all the Pokemon. They're already limiting the amount of Pokemon that you can interact with in the video games. On top of that, there's only so many cards per set. You can't put all Pokemon in one set. So, and now we're starting to see sets that there's no theme to them. I was opening up Stellar Crown the other night. There's no theme to that set. There's nothing. Like that set just feels like a hodgepodge of nonsense all thrown into one box. Like there isn't a theme to it. It doesn't make any sense to me. Limiting yourself can sometimes make you have to be more creative to make things be better. If you're limited with what you have, like I think it's always interesting when they have like game jams where it's like, oh, over the course of a 2-day weekend, you guys have to create a video game or a short film contest, because it's like you get to see how creative people can be creating like a 2-minute short film with 24 hours. And some people can be super freaking creative. Sometimes limiting can be what you need to create something great. Because if you have too much shit that you're trying to do all at once, you're going to get a set identity like Stellar Crown, which doesn't make any freaking sense. There's literally there's nothing. It's just a whole bunch of nonsense thrown into a box. Outside of 151, set identity pretty much died with Shining Legends. I mean, I think the shiny sets set identity is the shinies, right? That's what you expect from a shiny set. I think that Paradox Rift had a decent set identity because it was all the future and past Pokemon that they put into the video game, so that kind of made sense. But sets like Stellar Crown, Twilight Masquerade, like what are these sets? What is the identity? I don't know. And if you're making like 3 sets that have identities based off of a DLC that only probably 5% of the amount of people that actually played the base game know anything about, like what are you doing? Like it doesn't that it just seems weird to me. Like it just doesn't make any sense. Shrouded Fable had an identity. I wouldn't know what the identity is because I mean I guess it was just the 3 like Ogie Dogie and whatever. Because it was DLC, right? So I don't know any of that is because I didn't play the DLC, just like 95% of people that played that that game. And the specialty sets tend to have a decent identity. Pretty much. I mean, some of them can feel a little hodgepodgey, but Japanese set identity is pretty good on average. English should just make their sets mirror Japanese, but it would be completely change box price dynamics. Yeah. Or you do like with Paradox Rift where you had what Wild Force and Cyber Judge, which both had identities, and you put them together because they make sense to go together to have that as a set identity. That makes sense. So because of the future and the past Pokemon that showed up in the video game, like that set actually makes sense because you had 2 sets that were on their own, their own thing, but when you put them together, it actually makes for a good set identity. But that's maybe the one base regular set of this era so far that actually has like a decent set identity that's not a specialty set. Stellar Crown makes more sense than you think. The Stellar stuff, Briar's a teacher in Blueberry Academy and gets obsessed with finding out about the Terapagos. Cool. I don't know any of that because it's probably in a DLC, right? I bet that Pokemon Company probably knows how many people who played their base game also bought and played their DLC, and it's probably like 5% of the people that played the base game actually bought and played the DLC. It's probably an extremely tiny percentage. So we've had what at least 2 sets that have been based around the DLC, maybe 3. You're talking sets that I think it's much higher. There's no way. There's no way it's much higher. There's absolutely no way. Hold on. Pokemon Scarlet. We can just look at sales data. Scarlet, Violet, copies sold. So 25 million units of Scarlet and Violet were sold. What's the DLC called? I don't even know what the Crown Tundra. No, that was the other one. What's the DLC for this game called? 25 million units of Scarlet and Violet were sold worldwide. What's the I don't know what the DLC is called. Let's just do DLC copies sold. It doesn't say. Oh, Hidden Treasure of Area 0. I'm assuming because the DLC was a digital release, I'm not sure if we have the sales information on that. It looks like the game itself sold 25 million units, but I can't find data on the DLC. They don't disclose DLC sales, probably because they're a tiny fraction of the amount of the actual game that was sold. I would be surprised if it's over 5%. That would feel high to me if 10% of 25, like 10% of 25 million is 2.5 million of the buyers. You think 2.5 million of the people that bought the base game also bought the DLC when it came out? There's no shot. There's absolutely no shot. Um, I highly, highly doubt. What's up, Ernie? How's it going? Let's see. You think so? You think 2.5 million people bought the DLC when it came out? I don't know. I highly doubt it, but maybe someday we'll know. I'm not saying that they should neglect the DLC stuff. I'm saying make it one set, not 3 sets. Maybe make it one set of the and make it a DLC specific set and not 3 different, mainline sets, or one specialty set and 2 mainline sets or whatever with DLC Pokemon that a fraction of the amount of people actually played. Let's see. It runs into the reserve list type problems down the line that MTG has. I mean, don't people move on from different decks like fairly quickly in Pokemon? Like, isn't that kind of always changing and flowing like every 3 months? Like new decks are created that are used in the TCG. So in like 1 year or 6 months of new sets, wouldn't the sets that are being used now like not really be necessary? Especially if they're introducing like new mechanics and stuff like that. Also, you could take abilities from cards that were previously on retired cards, and you could put them on new cards with different Pokemon. I mean, I'm sure it's harder than that, but I'm just spitballing. This might be a hot take, but I would have preferred all the hits from 151 to be spread across S and V sets instead of having one good set in 151. I think the set identity of 151 is really good, and I'm glad that that set exists, because I think if you had spread out the hits from 151 like to these sets, I think it would have continued to make these sets feel super strange and identityless. But I guess since they don't have much of an identity anyway, they could just throw them in there and it would work just as well as the other ones. If you just play the hits, you run into issues with other TCGs have. It's a pretty delicate balance. English TCG set. Yeah, but we're talking Naruto and One Piece, and I know that those anime have a lot of characters, but at the same time, I don't think they have 1,000 characters that they have to juggle between. Maybe One Piece, because that show's literally will never die and has been around forever. But I watch Naruto. I don't think there's 1,000 characters that they have to try and figure out how to put on a Pokemon card every new set comes out. So, English TCG set design been largely doo-doo. They don't care about it and want to focus on Japanese sets. Yeah. Let's see. Talked about that. TCG would change, but unretiring Pokemon would feel weird after you retire them. I hate how they randomly stuck the Bulba in the Squirtle. Naruto had very poor set identity because they kept printing popular characters in every set. I understand that, but Pokemon has like an insane number of popular characters that they can pull from. It doesn't have to just be the most popular Gen 1 characters. Like they have popular characters from every game going from generation 1 to generation 9. So it's they have enough popular characters that we shouldn't be seeing a Bruxish illustration rare. Like period. That just it just shouldn't exist. It shouldn't exist. I know I'm focusing on like the Bruxish, but like it's the best example of what I'm talking about. A Bruxish illustration rare should not exist in a series like Pokemon that has over 1,000 Pokemon to choose from, 50% of which are probably at least 50% of which, maybe 90% of which are more popular than Bruxish. And yet we have to figure out, okay, well, Bruxish exists. It hasn't had a Pokemon card in how many years? We got to figure out how to use Bruxish instead of just saying, guess what? Bruxish retired. We're not gonna put Bruxish on a Pokemon card anymore because we've run the numbers and we know that Bruxish is one of the least popular Pokemon in the history of Pokemon. So we're not going to put it on a card anymore. It's going on the retired list. Good, cool, good, awesome. It just makes sense. Java turns on the red lights when he talks about Bruxish. I just think that, like, I don't know. That's what's great about Pokemon, that any Pokemon can have an AR. I don't know how to explain this any more than I have. They could Thanos finger snap away 50 Pokemon and 99% of people wouldn't notice. True. True. I honestly didn't even know that some Pokemon existed until a couple weeks ago. Like Elgin, didn't even know Elgin was a Pokemon until like 3 weeks ago. And I was like, okay, well, I know Elgin exists now. Heatmore. Like we together tonight could come up with 200 Pokemon that you could snap your fingers and they could disappear and no one would care. There'd be that one corner of Reddit r/Heatmore fans, and there, the 5 people that are in there would be like, "Oh no, what about Heatmore?" And I'm sorry, Heatmore Reddit. I'm sorry that you have a anteater fetish, but he doesn't need to be around anymore. Put him on the retired list. So we should make that list. No, not on stream, but I do think that we could come up with a pretty damn good list of quite a few Pokemon that we could just remove from Pokemon altogether. And honestly, we would be better for it. I do believe that the company, the people, the thing about Pokemon that I wish that people could get away from is this idea that, like, oh, well, it's the most popular it's ever been. It sells the most copies of video games it ever has. Therefore, they don't need to change anything. And it's like, that's to some degree, that's true because they're making so much money and people still buy the games even though they're underwhelming. People will still buy the cards even though the sets are underwhelming. People will still do all this stuff because it's Pokemon, right? And I get that. But at the same time, we need to think about how much better it could be if they put the effort into it. Because even though it's successful still and people are still funneling so much money into it, imagine if it was better. Imagine how much more money they could make if it was better. Imagine how much, but instead, we keep celebrating the mediocrity. And then they get to sit back and say, well, we sold the most copies of any Pokemon game ever. Looks like we can just copy and paste it on the next copy again. And it's like, why is there no expecting more instead of just, oh, well, it's popular right now, so why are we complaining? It's like, well, maybe we should expect a little bit more from them. That Apple and Skyscraper Pokemon need to go or take a break. I feel like they could make a new Pokemon game without adding new Pokemon to it. They could add stories areas to Johto or Hoenn and keep their regions decks. Please voice act the story. There we go. There's some ideas. I absolutely think they could put out a Pokemon, like the next Pokemon game would not have to add any new Pokemon. They could do something interesting like that instead of trying to add even more to an already bloated Pokedex. Pokemon's playing the long con. They've been 25 years, man. They're still going. Bye-bye Trumbeak. There you go. Oh, man. Yeah. I don't know. I obviously that would frustrate a lot of people, but at the same time, like I personally think it would be a good idea to retire a bunch of Pokemon off the list. But Bouffalant, yeah. Last time they took big risks in games was when they made Black and White Gen 5 only for the main story. It got so much blowback that they well, the thing with Gen 5, and I think we talked about it earlier, but the big thing with Gen 5 is they not only did they make it for the story, which I think most people say that Gen 5 has the best story of any Pokemon game. What they did was they soft rebooted the Pokedex. They said you can't play with any Pokemon other than Gen 5 Pokemon until you beat the game, right? So it's like, of course that was going to frustrate people. Like that just period. I mean, look at, we talked about Sword and Shield earlier and how Sword and Shield didn't include all the Pokemon and people were pissed about that. And so when Black and White came out, I think the idea of trying to soft reboot to a new Pokédex and then having the other Pokemon be, the national decks, I think that rubbed some people the wrong way. Rubbed me the wrong way at the time, I'll be honest. But I played through it. I enjoyed Gen 5. I liked a lot of Gen 5 Pokemon, but Flamingo was the most egregious thing I've ever seen done in a Pokemon game. It's just a Flamingo. Yep. That's true. Now people revere those games too. Yeah, they do. They say that Gen 5 is the best, mainly because of the story. It's definitely a game I'd like to go back and play for sure. Worse than ice cream cones, worse than key rings, worse than ice cream cones, worse than Seal, same amount of creativity as a Flamingo, though. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. So Flamingo came out 26 years after the start of Pokemon, and Seal came out in the very first 150 Pokemon. So I understand your point. I understand your point that Seal is just a seal and Flamingo is just a Flamingo. But with 25 years of creating new Pokemon, you would think that after 25 years, they would be a little bit more creative with what they would create instead of just making a Flamingo. So I can see why they were less creative in the first 150 and why maybe we should expect them to be more creative in the 900 to 1000 after they've created a bunch other ones. But yes, I see what you're saying. Dugong could be Thanos snapped right now. Honestly, Seal and Dugong, get rid of them. Seal and Dugong, bye-bye. I agree 100%. Boom, gone. See, there's a bunch of Gen 1 you could get rid of. There's a bunch of Gen 2 you could get rid of. There's a bunch of Gen 3 you could get rid of. I'm not even saying you have to keep all 151 of Gen 1. There are so many Pokemon in Gen 1 that you could Thanos snap. Doesn't it get harder to come up with original ideas after 1,000 creations? Then don't. Make a creative game with a new story, with new characters, with new whatever, with Pokemon that already exist. Don't make new stuff. If you can't make cool new stuff, don't make new stuff. Focus on other parts of the game that you can innovate and make interesting, like the story or like the gameplay or like the graphics or something else. Don't make any more new Pokemon. Yeah. Evaporate Jinx. Yeah, get rid of Jinx. You don't have to worry about the controversy with Jinx anymore. Thanos snap Jinx. Just make a game that links two regions in a creative way like Gold Silver did. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't seem like anyone wants to hop on and disagree with me, so I must have a good idea right now. There are some disagreements in chat though. No new Pokemon is needed. Yeah. Retiring 151 Pokemon after the 151 set would be an interesting idea, and do a Gen 2 set and retire some of them. You mean retiring some of the 151 Pokemon after the 151 set, right? Because I would never retire all from the 151 Pokemon. But yeah, I think that's kind of interesting. You're like, hey, we're celebrating this generation, and then we're going to retire some of this generation from being on cards. I think that would be a decent way of doing it. You do a little celebration for all of that generation, and then you retire some of them. Mr. Mime is low key good in the game. What's up, Pull Father? How's it going? Welcome. I think at 9 o'clock, the boys over at Slabbed are going live. So I do have this to automatically redirect over there when we're finished up. Red Blue. I mean, Psychic period was way too good in Red Blue. Like Mewtwo was insane in Red and Blue, as well as Alakazam was insane in Red and Blue. Like Psychic was OP in Red and Blue. So, but yeah, I don't think I've ever played with Mr. Mime like as a Pokemon on my team before. But yeah, I can imagine that he would be super OP for sure. For sure. But yeah, I hope you're good, Pole Father. Does this work? Did I actually Psychic only type with no weaknesses? Yeah, I think in Red and Blue it didn't have any, right? And then they added Dark in Gen 2 to kind of like counteract it. Then we got Umbreon. And then they had to go and add Fairy at some point and change a bunch of Pokemon into Fairy types. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's an interesting thing. I think it's an interesting thing. I wouldn't mind seeing that. I was hyped for light or sound type. Light or sound type. That would have been interesting. I think somebody asked. Man, where was it? The other day you said why some cards have. The other day you said why some cards have different climates. Oh yeah, when I was opening the set, when I was opening the set, I was like, why is there like 3 cards in the snow? It was another thing that didn't make any sense to me. But I guess maybe it makes sense because the DLC. But yeah, since nobody played the DLC or I didn't play the DLC and not as many people would have played the DLC, they probably felt a little bit weirder about it. I thought that somebody asked how would you figure out which Pokemon to retire? But now I can't find it. I think that's information that Pokemon Company already has. I think they already know like which Pokemon are the most popular. It's very easy to figure out which Pokemon are the most popular, and I think that it would be easy enough for them to say, to just focus on the Pokemon that are the most popular. Why wouldn't you? You have over 1,000 Pokemon. You focus on the most popular, like 600 Pokemon, and you retire the other ones. You have to keep the evolution lines or whatever. So if you had, let's say, Ampharos was one of the most popular, you'd have to keep Flaffy and Mareep. But I think you could find a few hundred Pokemon that would make sense to hang up. Um, but I feel like they kind of do this already. Yeah, I mean, I kind of explained earlier that was like it's about setting expectations. It's not necessarily about like because if you just silently don't print a card for a while, people will still be like, "Ooh, is this going to be the set where we see X Pokemon that we haven't seen in 6 years?" Instead, if you put them on a retired list, there's an expectation that you're not going to see that Pokemon anymore on cards. So there's no wondering, there's no frustrations when that new set comes out and that Pokemon's not in it. There's no like you've set an expectation with the people to realize that um that Pokemon will no longer be printed. Fan voted TCG set would be neat, probably very predictable, but still fun. Yeah, I don't know. What's up, Professor Oak? How's it going? How are you? 30th anniversary, we'll get a fourth Applin line. We already have 5 Applin Pokemon. So, yay. But yeah. Pokemon 100% has that info. They could just pull Pokemon Center's merch sales, plushies. Yeah, they could look at there. I mean, there's so much. They could do community polls. They could look at merch sales. They could look at card sales. They could scrape card sales from eBay. I mean, we can do that right now. So obviously they could do it. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that they could do to figure out which Pokemon to retire. Yeah. I wanted them to do a fan powered set with the Pokemon Go using fan submitted pictures. Yeah, we were talking about that before. That would have been an amazing idea. This would have been an incredible idea. Um, is have people who are catching Pokemon take and submit screen caps from their phone of the Pokemon that they're catching. Because you could be because of the whole augmented reality thing, you could be really clever with it, and you could have a Mewtwo at the Empire State Building and take a photo of that, or you could have a I don't know, a Pikachu at the Louvre or whatever, and you could do that. And you could have people like actually take screen caps that you then submit, almost like the Art Academy stuff, to Pokemon to then put on cards. But they didn't do that. Instead, they did what they did. But yeah, it was very interesting. It was a very interesting Pokemon. There was a very, very interesting. It was a good idea that was not executed for the Pokemon Go thing. Pokemon purposefully at times chooses Pokemon that normally don't get love. They have said this so they don't only think about popular ones. We're not saying they don't only think about popular ones, but they definitely have an idea of. I mean, they wouldn't be able to choose which Pokemon normally don't get love, or normally aren't, printed or as popular if they didn't know which Pokemons were also popular. So, and I do understand like that they want to show some love to certain Pokemon, but again, that's what creates the quote unquote issue. Is they feel beholden to put Pokemon in sets that they haven't put on a card in a while, which then takes the slot of what could be a more popular Pokemon. So then you have an issue, right? Because you're limited. You're limited in the amount of Pokemon you can put in a set, but you have 1,000 Pokemon to choose from. So that's where the limitations come in. If you limit it further down, you have, let's say, 100 cards in a set or 200 cards in a set, and you're only choosing from 500 different Pokemon. That's a very different looking, potentially a very different looking set than if you have over 1,000 Pokemon with a bunch of Pokemon that aren't really that that popular or interesting or stuff that people are looking for. But I can imagine they feel pressure to put Pokemon on cards that normally don't get um, that normally don't get love. Uh, Let me see. NanP just sent me an article. Step 1, pick a Pokemon. Oh, interesting. All right, I'm just going to read this part. According to Nagashima, the most important thing when coming up with a new set of cards is variety. There needs to be a mix of art styles, types of cards. Some need to have strong competitive potential, while other cards need to be appealing to collectors. But the first step is creating a new set. To creating a new set is deciding which Pokemon to use. Near the beginning of a new series based on the latest video game, we really try to take care to stay true to the video games that we're basing the card series on. For example, the Pokemon that were featured heavily in the video game or had a big role in the story. We'll make sure they're kind of at the center of the set we're making, which makes sense. That's like the first couple sets, right? The first set usually has the legendaries, and the second set will usually have the starters as like illustration rares or secret rares or whatever. But once we're kind of midway through the series, we start focusing on more on play environment overall and decide which Pokemon to put in based on that. A lot of choices come down to what the game needs to feel more balanced and what Pokemon suits those needs. But the team also considers which Pokemon don't get a lot of love in the games or anime, the ones kids might find cool, or even Pokemon they themselves like. Oh, that is. I'm trying to think. I don't know. That is an interesting way of going about it. Um, okay. Maybe they don't use the data that I was hoping that they use to pick Pokemon, because that is not the way that I would choose a Pokemon, but I mean, they're the Pokemon company. Uh, guess what, guys? If I was in charge of Pokemon sets, you'd have a Charizard in every single set and you would fucking like it. Deal with it. One of my favorites is Darkrai, and I think you'll notice there's a lot of strong Darkrai cards, he said, laughing. Well, Darkrai should be strong because Darkrai is literally like a legendary mythical Pokemon. Like, he should be a strong character. There are also background stories and themes for each expansion. Not really. In the XY Breakthrough expansion, the theme we had was two parallel worlds. They both feature Mewtwo. So there was a Mewtwo that was in the advanced world, and there was a Mewtwo that was more old fashioned. That makes sense. Those two parallel worlds collide, and then the world goes into chaos and is destroyed as a result of that. According to Nagashima, one of the team's biggest challenges is maintaining the spirit of certain characters and Pokemon while putting their own spin on things because the card game is closely tied to the video game. It can also be tricky to translate certain game mechanics into ones that work in the TCG, like Mega Evolution. In the trading card game, you have your basic Pokemon. You evolve at stage 1, stage 2, final evolution. If we add another step on top of that, you wouldn't have enough room in your 60 card deck. Okay, that makes sense. So we took our approach. Ultimately, the TCG team is always trying to keep things fresh and varied while still paying attention to the competitive meta, and it's a complex balancing act, even from the beginning. Yeah. Okay. Well, sounds like I just need to get a job at Pokemon Company then, and then tell them what my favorite Pokemon is, and then they'll make more of them. No, but I mean, I don't know. It makes sense. I mean, I'm sure they feel like I've been saying. I'm sure they feel pressure to choose Pokemon that don't normally get a lot of love because there's a lot of Pokemon. There's a lot to choose from. So, but yeah, I don't really have anything else tonight, you guys. If we're all good after that, I know the boys are going live in what 10 minutes or so. So when they did Pokemon Snap 2, they should have done fan submitted cards too. Yeah. So, another round of Snap cards would be pretty sick. But have you guys seen the uncut Snap sheets? That's a wild. That is, those things are super rare. Because the Snap cards themselves are extremely rare. So to have uncut Snap card sheets is crazy. Actually insane. The XY stories, most people didn't notice just because they don't really pay attention to the arts as much as they think. Gotcha. Okay. Feel like we're just finding uncut sheets every day now. It's crazy. It's crazy. Um, it is an interesting thing, though. I mean, it was another question that I almost made this live about, but I mean, we could talk about it now that we're like an hour in. I'll probably have enough people yelling at me about wanting to retire Pokemon or destroy half the deck, so we can throw another thing in here that people can yell at me about. Um, it was a question that I think it was Professor Oak. I think it was the profound Professor Oak said, and I very much agree with them on this. I think I personally think that very few people would be questioning the authenticity of the alpha and beta cards if PSA graded them. And that really sucks. Personally, I think that really sucks that the grading company, which grading company that grades something determines how the community looks at its authenticity. But I 100% think that if PSA graded them, people wouldn't even be questioning the authenticity of these things. There would be, I wouldn't say that there wouldn't be any questioning, but there definitely wouldn't be like this widespread um, questioning that there is right now. I just don't think that there would be. Um, and I think that something to back up that idea is that when those Yu-Gi-Oh test print cards came out, the ones that Pikachu helped in surfacing, when those Yu-Gi-Oh test print cards came out, the whole idea behind why everyone thought or so many people chose to think that those were fake in some way or not real was because PSA said that they wouldn't grade them, right? So apparently they had gone to PSA. That whole like grader guy, right, or the authenticity guy was on that podcast with who was it, Rattle or someone like that, and said that they had seen the cars and they personally would not authenticate them. That for some reason made everyone just think that they're not real, even though CGC put out this whole sheet about how they went about doing it with dot matrices and all these different analysis and everything and the scans and all this stuff to figure out that they're real with the rosette patterns and everything. They still everyone still questioned the authenticity of them and whether or not they were real, um, just because PSA said that they personally as a company would not authenticate them, which is I think that's a frustrating thing. I mean, I think it's it doesn't even necessarily become about the cards anymore. It just becomes that whole like grading company tribalism thing that basically has been happening ever since CGC started grading cards, 3-4 years ago. And it's mostly perpetuated by YouTubers who have chosen to build their communities off of the hatred of CGC or other grading companies, which I think is frustrating to see, but it is what it is. People like to congregate around disliking something. Um, but a mutual dislike of something is far more attractive than a giving the benefit of the doubt or liking something that might be I'll just say a more logical stance. A more logical stance is less attractive than a mutual dislike that everyone can kind of rally around and all hate together. Negativity is much more popular than positivity. Unfortunately, you can just look at the news for that. Um, People should focus on more where the cards are coming from and less on the grading company that will slab them. I do think if I was CGC, um, the one thing that I would have done differently, because to me, it doesn't make sense to put a number grade on something that is a piece of paper mounted onto a card or a card like thing. So what I would have just done is do authentic, like the AU. I don't know why you'd put a number grade on these things at all. because they're mounted on a card. So what I would have liked to see them do instead of putting a number grade, put authentic AU, and then say what the thing actually is, because I think the most important thing with these cards is that they're authentic. Nobody really cares about like whether it's a 10 or a 9 or an 8 or a 7.5 or whatever, because they're literally like paper mounted onto cardboard. So I don't think that really makes that big of a difference. I'm sure that it will. I'm sure the pristine 10s will sell more than the regular or whatever. But I think that they definitely should have just put authentic, instead of an actual number, for something like this, for like a mounted paper mounted on card type of thing. How's it going, X-Ray Hawk? What's going on? Is it weird that I rarely think of grading companies as places that authenticate? I think more of these companies as places that condition cards. What? Yeah, yeah. It's not really something that you think about. Um, and I think mostly because authentication has been a struggle for all grading companies. Um, I don't know if you guys follow Swolepoke on Instagram, but Swolepoke has been pointing out recently. I think there are Fanatics auctions, or there might be eBay auctions. There's some auctions, but he's big into signatures and sketches and stuff like that. And apparently he can tell when sketches are real and when they're not real. And there's a lot of I don't want to misattribute this, but I'm fairly certain that he has pointed out quite a few PSA graded slabs that have signatures and sketches that he is saying are not real, are forgeries. Um, I don't know if that's the case. He is someone who does a lot more in signatures and stuff than I do, but I think that when it comes to these like really niche things, signatures that are easy-ish to replicate probably by the right person, um, you do have to look at more like the provenance and where's it coming from and all that stuff. Now, I think that I see this is so bad. I'm not going to say that I know this for sure, but I thought I saw that someone had posted that a lot of these like prototype cards and stuff were coming from Akabane, who was a person who was involved in creating the Pokemon cards way back in the day. Um, and that he was having health issues, or somebody in his family was having health issues. I'm not 100% sure on that. So, look it up yourself. But it would make more sense for these cards to be coming out at this time if he needs the money for a medical reason. Now that could just be something someone's making up to make them seem more legitimate. It's very possible. I'm not going to say that is or not. The health issues were SB. I don't know what that means. What's SB, Dan? SB. SB. Hold on. SB. SB immunity. Oh, Sean said that. Okay, got you. Okay. So Sean Bassick said that. So, oh, he said that, or someone on his side was having health issues. Oh, you think he is the one having health issues, but I'm not entirely okay. So it's a possibility that Akabane is not the one having the health issues, but Sean Bassick is the one potentially having the health issues. So take that as you will. Sean is a controversial figure, so who knows with that information and where it's coming from. But I did hear that through some sort of grapevine that there was something about cancer or something. I wasn't sure if that was Akabane who was experiencing that, or obviously now Dan is letting me know that it could have been Sean. So yeah, take that for what you will. But I don't think that it's so out of the realm of possibility for someone who created Pokemon cards to still have some of that stuff laying around, and to have kept a lot of that stuff after it literally came out and became a cultural phenomenon. Basically right when it came out. Like right when it came out, that shit was on fire. Everyone wanted it. It spread like wildfire all across the world. I don't think it's crazy to think that the person who created that, who would have a lot of these like um pre what would you say, pre-printing materials of these different cards, that these things would still exist. I don't think that that's out of the realm of possibility. Um, and to be honest, like if I was in that situation, I would want to keep them. It's just like people who it's just like all these like animation cells, right? From like Naruto or these old animes. You know, a lot of these artists, I'm sure, still have their original animation cells, right? So like if an entire episode of Naruto's animation cells came up for auction and were graded by some grading company, PSA, let's say, is authentic from the actual artist, would all of us be like, what the hell? Where did these come from? Like, no, it's probably realistic for the artist of an anime to have a lot of their original cells and to probably want to sell them eventually to make money off of their work, right? So like I don't think it's completely insane. Or props from movie sets. I'm sure there's still props that exist from the original Star Wars movie. You know, who knows? Maybe Mark Hamill still has the Luke Skywalker lightsaber. If he were to auction that someday for a bunch of money, like would all of us be up in arms about the fact that, you know, something like that could possibly still exist? Like I don't think so. I think it's pretty natural that these things could still exist. Um as historical pieces and be owned by the people who actually created the freaking thing. Now, if this was coming out by somebody who nobody knew, just some random ass person with no connection to Pokemon back in the day, absolutely like no provenance in the community whatsoever, and it just came out of the blue, then I feel like there's a lot more reason to be suspect about it. But yeah, I don't know. It, I don't know. I think that they're cool. Would I buy one? Absolutely not, because I do not have the money to buy one. But do I think that they're pretty cool? I think they're pretty cool. I think Dan, didn't you say that you have some coming to consignment for you? Um, that's pretty crazy. I also heard that is it collectible no man on Twitter? Somebody's like giving away one of them, which that does seem, I don't know. I mean, if they have a bunch of them, giving away one, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I really look at that as like a bad thing or not. Like there are people to give away somebody else. I mean, if they bought it and they're or if they bought it and they have so much money that they're going to give it away, and who knows if it'll be a fake giveaway or real giveaway, if they're just farming followers, if they're whatever they're doing with it. Um, who knows? How do you like the new Stellar Crown set? Personally, I'm not a huge fan. I think that it's whatever. There's a couple cool cards in it, but I'm not super I'm not super excited with it. I opened 4 booster boxes of it and I thought that it was okay. Um it was fine. I pulled a couple Bulbasaur, which I was pretty excited about, but overall there wasn't really that many cards in the set that I was super stoked about. So personally, I was a little underwhelmed with it, but yeah, it was fine. I mean, it's not a horrible set, but I don't think it's one that in the future is going to be like, ooh, everyone should stock up on Stellar Crown because that's going to be one people want in the future. I don't know. That wouldn't be my bet, but someone else could bet that. It's got to be quite a tax write off. I have no idea how that works. If you do like a random giveaway on social media, do you get to write that off on your taxes? And then how do you actually value what that Gengar would be? Dan, I'm curious what you think. Do you think that CGC should have just do you think that CGC do you think that it's weird that those cards have a number grade at all? Like that to me seems weird. Like why would you put a number grade on like paper mounted on cardboard? To me it's like if you the whole number grade doesn't make any sense. In my opinion, it should just say AU is authentic and be authenticated and be slabbed, but not like put a number grade. It just seemed, I don't know, the number grade seems way even more arbitrary than like a normal Pokemon card. to assign a number grade to literally paper that's been glued or mounted on cardboard somehow. Um, I feel like it should have just been AU authentic, and all of them would have been listed as just authentic without a number grade. It just seems weird. Um, if you spend 30K and write it off, you're just saving what you made in tax. Yeah, true. I mean, it's not like a free thing. Yeah. So much of what grading companies do is silly to me. I can see the silliness level being higher on these. Yeah, that just seems weird to me. Like, if it's something that niche and kind of weird as like piece of paper mounted on cardboard, I feel like you should just authenticate it because it's not really a card. You're more authenticating like the artwork or the it's more of a tool almost than a card. It's like a I don't really know how to explain it. But I think it matters more that it's authentic, not necessarily like a number grade associated with it. So it seems a little weird there, but yeah. Yeah, yeah. I'll be interested to see, Dan, what you targeted for your graded edge plays. I'm just too scared to buy anything off of TCG Player, so as when it comes to flipping English, I'm just like, I'll just stay out of that. I've had enough interesting experiences with TCG Player. I haven't done it in a long time though, so I can't say that that it would be better or worse. You seem to do just fine with them, so um, I don't know. For me, it's like, nope. I'll stick to Japanese cards. um, but yeah, I also haven't graded a lot of English cards. To be fair, like I have no freaking clue when it comes to grading English, like what you can get away with, what you can't. Um, the little like factory white dots, can that still 10? Who the frick knows? I'm much more comfortable grading Japanese and looking at Japanese and seeing issues and like identifying problems than English. It's a totally different ballgame. But yeah. Um okay, I've said too much. Oh, I know what you're talking about. I bought some of those in Japanese recently. Yeah. I mean, yeah, popular Pokemon. Um I I currently have 20 boxes of VSAR Universe and I keep looking at it like, maybe I should open those. But then I'm like, no, that's probably a bad idea. Um, I didn't know there was such a huge difference. I think I, maybe there isn't a huge difference, but it's totally different card stock. I feel like New Back Japanese is a little bit more lenient with like whitening and stuff because it's harder to see. I feel like there's just more to. I feel like they're different. I feel like maybe there isn't that significant a difference. I just don't know. Um, I've committed to experience 20 times 4 to 5 cards. So let's see how this goes. Well, I hope that it goes well for you guys. I have looked at that sheet. I have looked at graded edge when I went through my buys recently on like the Japanese one, but I feel like I feel like it's a good barometer for me to look and say, "Oh, this looks like it has a decent margin. Let me actually double check." Because I don't necessarily I don't know. I feel like I have to double check stuff. But it's a good thing to look at to be like, "Oh, I would have never thought about that card. Let me double check to make sure that that's legit." And then when you look and it's like, "No, it's a little closer than I thought," or "No, that's really legit. Let me buy that." It's a nice thing to give you ideas when you feel like you've run out of things to buy. Um, Want to grade my bubble meme, but I also want to complete the set and don't have a gap in your binder. Well, I would just complete the set then. I hear Bubble Me is a bad card no one wants. You know what, Hoodoo? I don't appreciate the fact that you literally went through TCG Player and bought Buy E and bought every freaking Bubble Mew when I was looking for some of those in my recent purchase spree. Hoodoo over here with the coupon just bought every single one that he could find, apparently. Um, so yeah, thanks for that, Mister. Thanks for that. He did that. Yeah, you should see his Instagram. He was on a story here recently. He probably laid out like 30 to 40 bubble mews all on a vendor's table. Yeah, he bought a bunch of them. Japanese ones though, not English ones. But yeah. Yeah. Only 2 English, yeah. All right, see you later, Dan. Have a good one. You'll probably see that later. Where do you think is the best place to buy raw singles online? Honestly, I'm not sure that I'm the right person to ask because I don't buy any English. Um, so if I don't know. Um, I don't know. I don't know. If I was buying English, I think Dan has some really good videos on like buying through TCG Player and having decent experiences. I buy a lot of my cards off of Buy Mercari, which seems to do pretty well for me in terms of like finding decent cards, especially with Ultra Modern. The mid era stuff can be tough, but the Ultra Modern stuff is usually pretty decent if you can find them. You know, if you can find them available, especially with the different coupons. Um, I haven't used any other sites to buy from Japan. There are other ones that have been recommended to me. Like, let me look at my Instagram. I think people, whenever I post a buy E scam me video, a bunch of people reach out and are like, "Why haven't you tried this website? Why haven't you tried that website?" I don't see. Um, I don't know. I don't know. There's some other websites that have been recommended to me to use for buying Japanese, but I just kind of stick to what I know. So it's a game of constantly sourcing good sellers that sell 10 candidates on eBay and TCGP. Yeah, that I think you can be I think there's less sellers on TCG player. Well, I used to do that when I was buying off of Buy. I would make a list of like good. It would be like good, meh, and absolutely not. And so every time I buy something, but now I buy so many orders all at once that it's hard for me to go back and be like, okay, this one was damaged. Okay, this one was this, or this one was this. Let me update my sheet, blah, blah, blah. But I think if I was buying off a TCG player, I think there would be it would be maybe a little easier to do that because I think um, there's probably less overall sellers on TCG player. I could be wrong on that, but I feel like when I look at TCG player, I see all the same guys all the time. Or like some big shops. There's some little guys here and there, but I feel like it's a place that has a more of a limited number of sellers. So you could probably more easily, you know, kind of figure out which ones to buy from and which ones not. Like you just test a seller. Oh, I think you just buy like what you want. And then if it shows up and it's damaged or something like that, then you just mark them off as like, okay, this is a no go. Um, I used to do that with Buy E, but I don't anymore. Uh, yeah. But yeah, kind of a shorter stream today because we didn't have anyone that I guess disagreed with me enough that they had to hop in and chat. But if you have any disagreements, make sure to let me know in the comments below. Try to do so politely, and we could have a bit of a back and forth. This will automatically push you guys over to Slab Podcast. They should be live here. And yeah, go see what Professor Oak and go see what Professor Oak and Greeny are talking about tonight. And make sure you say Java raid when you get over there. All right. All right, guys. We'll see you later. Bye bye.